was my best friend from 6th grade until 2 years ago. We were friends for 20 years or something. We don't talk anymore. But I do see it as just a phase in our friendship. Even though it could easily be interpreted as the end, I just have this like sense that I don't know what will happen.
What do you think that person's doing right now?
I think she's cooking dinner. She loves cooking. And I think she's probably getting ready to either watch a show or play video games. And she has a dog now who I never met. But I bet the dog is like lying on her lap or something. And she always loves to drink sparkling water. So she definitely has a cup of sparkling water. And she puts her feet up on the coffee table. And probably her partner is there. Yeah, I hope that she is happy.
In college, I had a friend named Hannah who, was a really close friend, bonded a lot over music, and just stayed up all night talking about whatever. But Hannah ended up joining the Foreign Service and has been traveling all over the world probably for the last 5 or 6 years. Occasionally we Facebook message or oh, miss you. It'd be so nice to see you. But at this point, she's gotten married and she's just has a whole new life. As do I. And we'll probably never reconnect.
Was it just a friend thing or was it?
Just friends, always friends.
And it's not that we had a definitive break or had a falling out, but I think I'm just in a place where I don't talk to that many people that much in this moment.
A lot of our conversations through text messages or through emails is often about not being able to see each other or not being able to follow through with an already tentative plan that we've made. And I miss her. Yeah, that makes me sad, especially because I think a lot of my days are filled with a lot of loneliness, a lot of anger towards what I expected to be or have as an adult, and the reality and the realization of that they can't happen, or that they're not possible, or that there are things that either internalize or external obstacles that prevent me from being close to people. She's changed, and I think we were often silly and conversations when we were younger. I think we were afraid to be intimate in ways that made us vulnerable with each other, so there's a lot of jokes. I think she's probably in bed with her boyfriend, and I'm hoping she's happy and warm. I know she misses her cat, but I wish that we were in each other's lives more.
It's been in my mind for a while. My grandmother, who raised me when I was a baby to when I was about 3 or 4 years old, we used to be really close. When my mom ever said something against my grandmother, I would stand up for her and I would fight my mom. So there was always this connection there, but in recent years, I've been on the phone with her. We've lived apart for so long that, when we talk on the phone, maybe once every 3 months, she just doesn't sound like anyone I can connect to anymore. And we can have conversations, and I think that is something that breaks my heart the most. People in her generation from China have just lived such different lives and had such different experiences growing up and aging.
Yeah, my grandma. It's kind of weird. I mean, you kind of know my story, but I came here when I was 4. And before that, I was really close to my grandma. And then I remember when I got here, I was super sad, so I would just eat all the time. Because I was sad that I was missing my grandma and we left her back in Mexico. And when I was younger, yeah, we would talk a lot. And then now, in my 20s, I haven't spoken to her in maybe 2 years. And then I feel there's this weird disconnect now. And sometimes maybe that's why I'm scared of calling. What if they don't miss me? Is that weird? Yeah, maybe it's weird.
So what do you think that she's doing right now?
I know what she's doing. at home, you know, she plays with this poker cards, her own game of solitaire that also tells the fortune, and she always reports to us when she has like a good result from the solitaire. When I think about her, most of the time is how much I would miss her if she is no longer here on Earth, and that will always bring me to tears. But then I think, what difference does it make? It's not like I'm seeing her anyway now. If she passes away suddenly, life would be the same.
I guess I'm almost used to it, and then I remember, and it like it's really jarring. But like to think that we talked almost every day for 7 years, and then one day, like literally one day, we stopped talking to each other. She like made me feel like someone would want to be with me. Because I was like still kind of in disbelief when we were together, and she would have to like repeat to me that like I was like so much worth being with.
What do you think she's doing right now?
She's probably either talking with her parents or her sisters or petting her pet buddy. Maybe journaling before she sleeps.
When I was like a teenager, I had this realization that my relationship with my parents is never going to be like on good terms ever. And I felt that if they found out, I would immediately be cut out of the family forever. So in some small and quiet way, I cut myself out of the family. But hello? Hello? No! Is this recording? No!
Hello?
Hi, thank you for agreeing to do this. I can ask the question again of you?
Yes, that'd be great.
So, is there anyone in your life you thought you would talk to always, but now you don't?
Yes. There was somebody who I thought was the love of my life, and I no longer talked to this person because I needed to spend time severing that bond so that I could move forward. And I think, hello, can you hear? Hello? Okay, I'm not saying it very well, but I think I'm a very loving person, and so part of what makes me feel alive is the ability to sort of give my love to other people and to have it returned. But I think I had to realize that if somebody didn't want to be with me, I had to just sort of like love myself enough to know that I, deserved everything I wanted, not just the ability to have what I was giving returned. It was interesting because it was my first experience of feeling something larger than myself and cosmic almost, so that it felt that we were supposed to, it was my first soulmate type connection with anybody, so I did feel like outside of time. But the realization that I had also was that, this is the life I live in. I don't live in space. I live on this earth, and in this earth, you chose not to be with me. So, the meant to be was severed by a decision that I had no control over, and I had to sort of wrest control back by saying, well, is this what you want? Sort of to be connected to someone in the planets or in some other plane, but not have the love really realized in real life, and it's not what I wanted.
My father was like a tiger dad, and he also didn't work because he had hepatitis B from when he was in China, so he was sick and couldn't work, and we were really poor growing up. So there was this trust of the American health system and the unfamiliarity with it. So instead of actively seeking treatment. He chose not to exert himself, so he didn't work full time, and he just spent all of his energy taking care of me. My dad and I were really close. He was really into basketball. When I was young, I would watch basketball with him all the time. He was really into cars, so I was into cars. When I was a kid, I could name all of the cars that I saw on the street. The make, the model, the year, he shaped me very deeply. And I think I just assumed that he would always be around. There was like a week where he had a fever that would not die down. My mom took him to the hospital, and he was diagnosed with liver cancer. And the doctors gave him 6 months. And it was almost exactly 6 months. And so after that, I lost touch with a big part of myself. And I stopped following sports. And I stopped caring about cars.
If you were alive today, what do you think you would be doing right now?
I really don't know.
I think there was someone who was always a part of my life, was my grandma, and I actually had a pretty contentious relationship with her. I think I was like one of the few people who could like break through her bullshit and connect with her. And my grandma was like the first major death in my life. Like people had died in my life before that, but I think it's different when you like really love somebody and are really close to them. And I think once you lose somebody, I feel like that's like a rite of passage to being a real human. If my grandma was alive today, she'd be playing games with her daughters, like mind games, because that's what she always did.
He was always telling me that I was worthless and that we had to that I had to do sexual things in order to prove that I wasn't worthless anymore. I remember thinking that I had to be with him forever. Like at some point, I was writing these entries on live journals, and I would say, I have to come to terms with the faults in myself, I have to realize that even though I'm suffering, sometimes you have to be selfless and you have to think about others, and I feel like I'm getting stronger, and he asks me to make my character stronger for him. And I thought that I was in this relationship bound by duty, and I thought that I would be with him forever. And I even thought, I had these thoughts, maybe I'll get into a better college than he does, and then I won't go. And instead I'll go to a college we can both go to. And I saw that all of these doors were closed in my life. And for some reason, I was in a state of mind that just sort of accepted it. I remember just one moment when it was raining late at night. There was this bottle brush tree with these red spiny flowers outside of my house, and I was watching those red spines wave around in the rain, and I was thinking, and I remember just thinking I could leave. I just had this view. It was the only time in my life I can think that I have that forever view, except maybe now when I'm married. I think that even now I feel like I have the freedom to leave.
About my grandparents immediately because they left the earth this past year, and 3 of them, and so I'm so far away from home, and so I only caught one, and to basically touch my grandmother's skin before she turned into ashes. So I think there's something about the loss of them has a relationship with loss of myself. Because I've been here shortly, like a new immigrant, and I don't consider
consider myself completely fit in what's American going on. I kind of also don't feel that I have relationship with China anymore. And I didn't realize until I lost them. So there is something that they're missing, that they carry my childhood memory away, and that makes me realize, okay, I'm here now. Yeah, that's my story. Sorry.
This microphone is open for anyone who would like to maybe talk about what they were thinking about when they were listening to this piece, if any story came up for them, or just like, yeah, what you were feeling, something you noticed. I can tell a little story. I was in this recording. Mine was the one where the phone cut off. But I was talking about my relationship to my family. And when I was 16, I realized I was queer. And it's only gotten more queer since 16, but like, I just had this moment. I think it was actually like right after the first time I watched gay porn, I just had this moment where like it was dominoes, you know, just like, oh my God, like I enjoyed that. And then it was just like, can't really deny it anymore. And then I was just like, oh, with my parents, they would never accept me. So I just felt like I was like closing myself internally. I guess it was a much slower process, but I just saw this door, you know, closing, where I'd be like, you know what, I'm gonna protect my parents, I'm gonna protect my family from me, and I'm just gonna never tell them, or maybe I'll tell them after college or whatever. But then, I don't know, I think the mind is really great at rationalizing things that give us pain, right? So when I was in college and I would come back in the summers, I would have these like preemptive measures where I think the sophomore year when I came back from college, I saw my baby photos and our family albums, and I was like, I might never have access to this one day. You know, I might get cut out from the family. So I went and took photos of my iPhone of each photo, like 400 photos, just like one night, hid it, like locked away in my room. And I have those digitally. Like I'm the only person that has that in my family digitally saved. And it's so weird because my imagination is so apocalyptic. I think like any day now I'll never be allowed back home. But I mean, I went back last Christmas and it's so funny, I like brought out these photos, these albums, and was like sharing them, or when we were going through them, because I was meeting my nephews and nieces for the first time, we were going through them, and my parents, they didn't remember what was happening in the photos, but I did, because like I was a person who was like so obsessed with documenting them, and I was like, no, that was her 18th birthday, and I was 8 years old at that time, and I remember because I was crying right before this image, but I like had studied that image like secretly for like years, you know? So I don't know, it's just like forever, it's just like impossible. Like the older I get, the more I realize like I have no idea how to predict the future. Like however smart I think I am, it's like not really. Like I'm still talking to my parents, and in some twisted way, like I'm the person that has like the best understanding or like of my family history. Yeah. So thank you all listening to me talk about that. Queer historian here.
And I think I also like have another feeling for two of them having the collaboration together is I think both of them, three of them, that created a space for us to feel it's okay to be vulnerable and to face where your loss is happening or the thing that you can never go back is happening, and that feeling is okay to have. And so I think that's where the space that we're creating today.
My name is Kay, and I am feeling extremely vulnerable right now, feeling a bit jittery about telling the story, but I think some of you may have heard this before. But I'll start with the beginning, which is when I was growing up as a little boy, as a kid, I've been thinking a lot about childhood and the start of my imagination, and I think the realization lately is that my imagination is my best friend, and sometimes I'm scared that they've led me into this place that they've kind of gotten me a bit lost. They're my best friend, but they've guided me to this place that I'm completely alone in with them, and they can't be there for me. So as a young adult, I was always looking for the person or the personification of that imagination. So, all the music or all of the literature that I listened to informed what this idea might be like in reality. And when I was when I first moved to New York, I met somebody in a chance meeting, and I saw a body of their work, of clothing, and I felt for the first time in my life somebody who really understood how it felt to be in my skin. And I'm so shy about socializing myself. And for the first time in my life, I reached out to this person, thanks to the internet. Impossible without the internet. So I emailed him and found out that he was moving to Alabama the next day, but he also really wanted to meet me, so we went out to dinner the next day. And this started a 5-year friendship where he was in Alabama and I was in New York City, and we would email each other once every 2 months or 1 month, and they wouldn't be like, we didn't text, it wasn't like emojis and stuff, it was like paragraphs and pages of like what I've been thinking about, and sometimes it wasn't even like we would be having a conversation, sometimes it would just be like just pouring out what we were thinking about or feeling, our thoughts, what we were experiencing. That happened for about 4 or 5 years. And so one time, he was in Maine, in this beautiful place, an island, an archipelago called Stoke Newington. Literally, it's like a series of small little islands where the land and the water feel like, sometimes, literally the island disappears, and sometimes people live on these small little pieces of land, and you can only reach them when the tide was low and you drive across to get to your house. And it felt like this unity of masculine and femininity that I'd never felt before. It was a complete equilibrium of land and water, and it was spring, summer, and there were berries, just bountiful, wild strawberries, wild blackberries, just fields of them. And then later on in the season, there were just wild apple trees kind of dripping everywhere. And I remember one time we picked an apple from a tree, sneaking into someone's yard. And I felt so badly about it because I'm such a scaredy cat. But he said these were the best apples ever. And I was like, yeah, an apple's an apple. So we finally got these apples after about 20 minutes of waiting to make sure that nobody was in the house. Picked a basket full of apples. They were about a small child's fist size. Just dark and matte and freckled with these little green dots. And when you bite into them, the flesh was completely red and with veins, like the inside of the apple was red and bleeding, like a heart. And they literally taste of pure apple essence. Just like if you were a little kid and you imagined what an apple tasted like artificial apple flavor, like that, but actually natural. So the landscape was just so bountiful, and anyway, I stayed there for a couple of weeks, and one evening, it was an eclipse, and it was a beautiful. Actually, the first 3 times I'd been there, they were always full blood moons. The first 2 times I visited, and this third visit, there was a full solar lunar eclipse, and we were by the coastline of this private beach, where the morning before we had picked mussels from the shore to eat, barefoot under the eclipse, watching this event, and that was the first time we made physical contact. We kissed under this eclipse, and we were in the sand, kind of rolling around, and the tide was rising, and I was just like, what is this? Life, this is my imagination on fire. And so, I'm such a cheesy romantic, but then as the tide was rising, our feet touched the water, and all of a sudden the water kind of sparkled with phosphorescence. And I'm not sure if any of you have seen phosphorescence, but I did not believe in it. But when it happened, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like a Disney movie. Literally, like, it's like glitter in the water when you touch it, because they're like these little, I'm not sure, like living microorganisms that respond to touch and to light. And under the eclipse, I just felt everything that I'd ever imagined coming true. Anyway, so that was a beautiful situation, and I love that island so much, and I love Maine so much, and that relationship. But as we were driving back into New York City, I felt then and there that that experience and that love could have only existed in such a magical place. And I felt so happy knowing that I lived through that moment. And it was then I had identified some things in life, like my relationship with him was like we were the same person on opposite sides of the same coin, and we were running the same race, but we were running it from different ends. So in that intersection of time and space, we crossed each other for those few years, and when that crossing had to end, we were now running in opposite directions. And it's not a sad thing, because I do feel like it is a loop, like a figure eight, like eternity. And I do feel like in the next lives, more things that beautiful will happen. And so my room actually is just like an abstraction of that experience. It's not a room, it's in nature. So how do you capture something as fleeting as a day and night in natural air? So, yeah. Probably, I don't know if they're still in New York City, but they're probably sitting by candlelight, because we don't really we got along really well because we don't really like fluorescent light. We always live by candles. So they're probably next to candles and probably reading some 18th century book and eating an orange or eating a grilled goat cheese sandwich and tomato soup. So that's what I think.
Lovely circle. Oh my god, there's so many people. There's not. Yeah, this is great. Hi everyone. Wonderful night. I'm Petra. Wonderful night so far. Okay, so I'll share a story about somebody that I'll probably never speak to again. I moved to New York 5 years ago, and when I moved, I was engaged. He and I have known each other for years and years, and it was an on-off thing until I told him I was moving to New York. He couldn't move. He lived in the Philippines, and he said, "Tell you what, go ahead, and I'll come for you in a year." We didn't make it to the year. And if any of you have ever broken up through Skype, it's the worst. Diaspora feelings. And so what happened was, so we move on. I go through New York, I date around, and when I did the Marie Kondo, when I went through my Marie Kondo phase, I was cleaning up all of these old letters that we had, and I came across one that he had tucked into my suitcase before I left. And it said, "This isn't the end of us, this is just another phase, because we've known each other for so long. There's no universe in which I don't love you. And I'll wait for you, I'll live a lumberjack life, and I'll see you after a year. I will break down your door with my lumberjack arms, and I will say, hello, it is me. I have come from so far away to marry you, and then I will." And that hasn't happened, and I don't think it's going to.
Philippines. Yeah, 13 hours ahead in the Philippines. So he would be just waking up. He'd be waking up and getting ready for work.
What did he like to have for breakfast?
Just like black coffee. It's like rocket fuel.
Thank you. I was thinking about my best friend in college. She was this white lesbian fiction writer, and I was like the queer Asian poet. And we were best friends. We were kind of like the only queer people that like understood each other. We were in the same year. We like get dinner late at night and talk about writing, and like she would like listen to me talk about boys, and then she would talk about how like there are no lesbians at UVA, and we like did a lot of organizing together. We went to like writing retreats together in the summer. Yeah, she was like really the person that helped me get through college, and she also had a really hard time going to college because she was clinically depressed. So she would just be always working through her depression, and I would be trying to be there for her as best as I could with what I understood of depression at the time, which wasn't a lot, but yeah. And when we graduated, we ended up like moving to New York together to become writers. But when we moved up here, she started working at Covenant House, which is like the homeless shelter for LGBT youth. And we started seeing each other less and less, even though we lived in the same city. And I'm thinking about that person in the recording that said like, I'm so angry at the disappointments of being an adult, you know, of like, so much of my time is spent just trying to work through plans with friends that never come across, and I'm like sad. Like that is its own type of unique sadness. Is that like you thought being an adult in the city would be like so much more vibrant than it is, but it's so much of it's like bogged down with logistics and like slowly drifting apart from people. So long story short is that like we lost touch. We're both still writing. But she ended up marrying my sweet mate, the lesbian sweet mate that lived in the room across from me, or like the building across from me, who was also a mutual friend. So it was like a total twist of events, and I found out that they got married, and I was like really, I don't know what the feeling was. I was hurt and bummed that I wasn't invited to their wedding because we spent so much time together, the three of us. And I wonder, like, did I do something wrong? Did I piss them off? Was I just annoying, like more annoying than I remember? And then I had a dream about her. And in this dream, I like climbed up this massive hill. And I think I was like in DC, but it also looked like San Francisco. It was like Loris Park, but like in DC. And I climbed this massive hill, and I arrived at this gravel tennis court thing, and she and her new wife were like sitting there, and I just went to them. I was like, "Oh my God, you two, you look so good. How's the writing going? Like, I'm so happy to see you." And when I woke up, I realized like, oh, that was friendship heaven. Like, I was like in friendship heaven, where like all of your past friendships that died go to live like happy forever, you know? And it wasn't like completely sad thing, but it was just like, that was where that was. Like I climbed a massive hill, I saw my friend, and she was the happiest I'd ever seen her. She was like married with our mutual friend, and they were like, and they had the best spot on the hill eating like cheese, and we were just so thrilled to see each other. We weren't like blaming each other for anything. So I don't know, it was like just a beautiful moment. Like, yeah. Thank you all.
Can I just say, friendship heaven is my own personal dream. And I think we're also, yourself and myself and Lou, we're probably here because we're very sentimental people who have a real wish to not only be sentimental, like Lou is obviously very sentimental and so am I, but not only that, yeah, it's okay. Not only that, we feel very compelled to log the sentiment. Like, it's not enough to talk about it, and it's not enough to tell someone we love them, and it's not enough all of that is not enough. It must literally be logged, and it must literally be recorded and put down and repeated. And we have to ask it of a crowd. Like, somehow we cannot contain our own sentimental issues, like within our bodies. And I think that's what brought the three of us together, and that's also why I created my own project. It's a will to put it down on paper or record it so it lasts forever. So the thing that is ephemeral by nature then becomes reality, either on paper, like in a room, or recorded on an MP3 you can then play over and over again. And I think that's like our shared coping mechanism for all these things that are so loose and don't exist and are just memory. And I think it's very meaningful to me to find these kindred spirits who also must create a reality out of these things. I think it's very strange. I meet a lot of people who are just like, oh yeah, those old friends, that's just life, and you just forget about them, and that's what you do, and that's the best way to do it. And I'm like, the absolute opposite. Like, I just want to do a little prelude for this. For the record, this project was born. I was at Rusli, and it was my final year, and I was in a big rush to do. You have to do a degree project, and ideally it's this big thing, and you've been thinking about it all 4 years, but everyone starts a week before it's due. This is senior year. Everybody, you're supposed to announce what it is at the beginning of your senior year, and everyone announces something fake, just fake. You just come up with something and you don't end up using it. And so for me, I came up with, in a big, crazy, crazed rush, I thought, what I want this to be is, the theme is now unusual ways to archive memories, and it was a bunch of different projects, and that was what I set for myself, because I had no other ideas. I had 2 weeks, maybe, on a good day. So the first one that I did was about my mom, and when I think about times when you're not in touch with someone, I think about her, because she said when she went off to college, her mom didn't contact her once, just did not reach out to her. They did not speak for the duration after she left for college. And she said she felt so hurt and so abandoned by this that when I went to college, she sent me a letter every day. Didn't skip a day. She would just sit in her house, and she sent me a letter or a postcard or a weird mail clipping of an irrelevant thing, just a piece of crap clipping. And it was not anything relevant usually to my life or her life, but she just needed me to feel remembered in a way that she was not. So when I think about abandonment and think about people who are no longer in your life, her mom was so distant from her, so distant, and she went so overboard to make her love for me very concrete. It was on paper. I have all these postcards and letters saved in just a big giant box, in my basement, which is not the most cherished way to store these memories. But the first thing I came up with for this series of projects was a way to send a postcard that could just sort of it was perforated so you could tear it and then immediately send one back to keep the conversation going, because I think I became very, very, very paranoid about ways to keep the conversation going in any way, shape, or form. So for me, that's very much what this project is about, and that's what I feel like your project is also about, is a way that to keep the conversation going even if the person you thought would be there forever is not there forever. So I'm very glad we were able to collaborate on this.